public speaker, but I'm still going to be reading from my notes. Last Sunday morning, I was listening to Isabel Wilkerson, the author of The Warmth of Other Suns, on my favorite radio program, On Being. She was talking about the importance of knowing where we come from. So here goes a little bit about me. I teach preschool. I'm an only parent of an only child. I love taking photographs and making things. My father was born in Pennsylvania, so was I. He was first an engineer and then became a minister. My mother was born in Norfolk, Virginia. She was a beautiful, strong, spiritual woman. She met my father in New York City when she was working as an insurance actuary and he was in seminary. So she became a minister's wife, a wonderful mother and homemaker, and had a special gift for connecting people. My sister, Sarah, my closest friend and sibling, was a teacher and a writer. I inherited a little bit of all of them. I am also very fortunate to spend summers working at a beautiful lake in the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York with a wonderful family of friends. Some of them are here today. I could point out a few more. After living in Manhattan, working in the arts community for 25 years, I landed back here in Baltimore with my young son, in a city where my family has very deep roots. I've been digging down ever since, listening and learning more about this city every day by covering a lot of ground. I began shooting these pictures about this time last year, after a very traumatic time in my life. In less than a year, I had lost my mother and my sister. I was struggling to raise an adolescent boy, and I had lost my balance. I was grateful to get a lot of help and was beginning to feel better, awake again and inspired. I drive my son down to Federal Hill every morning, listening to the radio, trying to process the dreadful news. I love seeing the city waking up in the morning light. I still shoot several pictures with my iPhone from my car along the way and later post on Facebook, captioned, "Good Morning Baltimore." Friends liked and made comments on the pictures, so it became a positive, interactive daily practice. In March, I just happened to read an article in The Sun called "The Sublime Psychology of Baltimore," a powerful piece about the complexity and history of Baltimore as the birthplace of psychoanalysis in America. The words which were quoted in the article of psychologist Jacques Lacan really spoke to me. The best image to sum up the unconscious is Baltimore in the early morning. They gave me a context for what I was doing somehow. I was searching for the unconscious. One of the authors, Daniel Buccino, is here today. There he is, back there. Many months later, Kevin Brown, the co-owner of SNAC, offered me the opportunity to show the work here. I was excited. I hadn't really shown my work in Baltimore except an installation at Betty Jean Murphy's apartment building further down Charles Street. Betty Jean was supposed to be here, but I hope she's still coming. There was a last-minute change. Veronica Salisbury did not exhibit her work, so I filled the empty space with the larger prints, the moving car, Children at Play, that I had taken 25 years earlier on the streets of Havana. They seem to relate so strongly to the images of Baltimore. I recently recognized that my work might be described as vernacular photography. Not only are the images a document of this time and place, but their composition and colors, juxtaposition of words, lines, and light are often visual metaphors that emerge like messages in my favorite photographs. Baltimore is a beautiful city, sadly known for racial tension, economic inequality, poverty, unemployment, despair, drug addiction, and most of all, its homicides. That violent image of Baltimore is always in or on the air. Gun words are embedded in our daily vocabulary. We shoot emails, we aim our ideas, we pull the trigger on our decisions. Our language is loaded, and our words can be dangerous. I called the exhibit drive-by shooting. I chose those words consciously, intentionally, to make a connection to the obvious double meaning of shooting as a way to focus on the tragic truth, not to ignore it. I know it feels offensive to some, and perhaps I made a mistake, but I believe there was a subconscious reason, because as a result of that title, many connections have come full circle, and I am grateful that new bridges are being built. The images, where I take them, the way I present them, where I exhibit them, where they go, what they mean to viewers, is all part of the creative process for me. I believe making art has healing powers. I have struggled for years to find a way to contribute in Baltimore to better serve our children, our public schools, to create healthy space for our young people to grow. I was very fortunate to meet Kevin, Fanon, and Navasha along the way. Now it's my hope that these artists, these pictures, and these words will lead to some new connections and bring more healing, hope, and help for those in need. We are all painfully aware of the chronic struggles of Baltimore, but what can we do about it? I'm a privileged white woman raising my black son in a very complicated and dangerous city. A year ago, a middle school friend of my son's was shot and killed on his way to the gym. Greta Carter Willis, who I hope will be with us soon, lost her son to a bullet fired by a police officer. She founded the Kevin L. Cooper Foundation, which Fanon may tell you more about. How can we make our city healthier, stronger, and safer for our children? I believe good food, good books, art, music, dance, theater, poetry, recreation, athletics, community centers for our youth can help. I believe in the work of the Youth Resiliency Institute and many other outreach programs. I am very grateful for the Baltimore Guitarists Against Violence and the contribution my friends, family, and I can make. I believe in the power of music and art. I hope at this time and in this place, we can all talk to each other and begin to heal old wounds and build new bridges that can strengthen our communities and our city. And now I'd like to introduce Fanon Hill and Navasha Daya, the founders of the Youth Resiliency Institute. Some of the proceeds from the sales of my work will be donated to their not-for-profit organization. I was very inspired to read the words on their website for their project, Baltimore Guitarists Against Violence. Imagine a Baltimore city where it was as easy to get a guitar as to get a gun. Thank you.
Bravo.
Thanks.
That wasn't so bad.
Thank you, Mary.
Can I sit there? Thanks.
So, once again, my name is Fanon Hill, and I am extremely honored and humbled to be here today. I want to thank my brother, Kevin, who does undying work in Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
This is more than just a cafe.
Oh, thank you.
Individuals come in here after experiencing trauma, and they find safe space. Individuals share with Navasha and I went through an amazingly traumatic experience, and I shared time with Kevin. And Kevin assisted me through that stage of my life, of my trauma. And so, when I think about Mary, and thank you, Mary, for this invitation, and I think about drive-by shooting, I think about witnesses. And one of the things that struck me initially a number of months ago when Mary gave me that call and shared with me information about this exhibition was Stephen Towns. Have any of you heard of Stephen Towns? Stephen Towns is an amazing artist in the tradition of Mary Gearhart, who understands the power of witnessing and witnesses. And Stephen had a work of art exhibited, or an exhibition, excuse me, at Goucher College. And the title of that exhibition was A Migration, and focused on Nat Turner and the Great Dismal Swamps and rebellion. There was an employee at Goucher College who felt very offended by Stephen's work. And so Stephen, in classic style and finesse, removed the exhibition and said, I have succeeded. Because we have to, as artists, disturb the peace. And if it means as artists, radio stations do not want to play our music, if it means as artists, programs such as Baltimore Guitarists Against Violence are not allowed in certain spaces because individuals are uncomfortable with children, specifically black children in Baltimore City, dissecting the poverty and the policies that are thrusted upon them. Artists must disturb the peace. So when I looked at Mary Gearhart's pieces, her photos, what struck me was in many of her photos, there were witnesses. And I often see photography, and there are people within that photography. But I know that people reside within those row houses. I know that people have once resided within those structures. So Mary, I want to thank you for utilizing your art to humanize the dehumanized, which is very rare in Baltimore City. 2008 was very special for me. 2008 was when Baltimore Guitarists Against Violence, the program, launched. I learned about a shooting outside of a church in West Baltimore, Unity Methodist Church. And next to that church is a structure known as Talent Development High School. And I thought to myself, after finding out that students had witnessed this shooting outside of this church during a funeral, I thought about the trauma that they had to process. And I reached out to a couple individuals who worked at the school, and they indeed shared with me that there were no processes. There were no supports for those students who had bear witness to that shooting. So I got the crazy idea of getting my Stratocaster guitar and a wah-wah effect pedal and calling up a friend of mine by the name of Alan Wilson, who almost lost his life in West Baltimore as a teenager, who is an amazing pianist and whose arm was almost amputated due to the injury. And I said, Alan, I reached out to the school, and they're going to open up their auditorium for us to play music. And some of the individuals at Talent Development had no understanding of the power of music. Jimi Hendrix did. He actually had a song titled The Power of
Soul.
And so we wanted to bring some soul into talent development and acknowledge these young people and their contribution and their strengths and their beauty, as Mary has done through her work. And the minute I plugged that guitar into the amp, and my foot went down on that wah pedal, and the echoing and the colors hit those young people, they stood up and started clapping. They started moving. And they started talking about what they had witnessed. I knew at that point I was going to have to somehow secure guitars. Now, if anyone knows anything about guitars, I'm originally from East Cleveland, Ohio. And it's very interesting because in most disinvested communities, most high poverty communities, you will never see a music store. It's very interesting. You may see a pawn shop, and that's what's the case with me as a young person growing up. I told my grandfather that I wanted to play guitar. He took me to a pawn shop, got an E bass guitar string, and I put that on an electric guitar that was not built for playing bass guitar music. But something happened. I slowly discovered about fingering positioning, about alternate tuning, and that was the spark that led me to the work that we are doing now collectively. In 2010, I reached out to an institution in Baltimore who I like, or we know as Abu the Flute Maker. And I call Abu an institution because I have listened to radio shows, radio programs, and Abu has been on those programs sharing about his work. And I will never forget this. There was a mother who was like maybe 44, 45, who called into this radio show. And she shared that her daughter, who was in kindergarten, ran home one afternoon and said, Mommy, guess who came to my class today? And the mother asked the daughter, well, who? Abu the Flute Maker. And the mother smiled and laughed and she said, well, baby, you're not gonna believe this, because when I was in kindergarten, Abu the Flute Maker came to my class. So Abu is an institution who has disturbed and continues to disturb the peace. I go to art festivals around Baltimore City and I don't see Abu the Flute Maker there. That has not discouraged Abu the Flute Maker from connecting with families and young people. So I'm very honored once again by the invitation. And what I requested when Mary shared that this event was going to take place, I requested that Abu the Flute Maker have an opportunity to share who he is and how he utilizes his artistry. So when we walk out of here, we understand that when we have programs like Baltimore Guitarists Against Violence, which Abu works in, the question of whether or not we get guitars isn't an issue. The question is, who is going to have the courage to meet those young people in their own communities and recognize their humanity? And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce my hero, Abu the Flute Maker, who's going to demonstrate his artistry. Thank you.
I'm pretty bashful because I'm usually my audience is a bunch of young children after school programs, but I've been recycling found objects into musical instruments since 1971. During that time, a gentleman friend of mine visited me with a Japanese flute, and I tried to get some sound out of it when he came in the door, and I couldn't. But when he got ready to leave, I said, let me try it again. And I tried it, and it went off. I was just amazed and excited by the fact that I got some sound out of it because it was a strange shaped flute. But not only did I get sound out of it, right away I started playing a song without practicing, blew my own mind. I found out something about myself I never knew. So that's why I tell young people when I'm doing my workshop, never say what you can't do until you try, because you never know what kind of ability you may have. Anyway, at that date when I started playing that flute, I ran in the basement. Back then they used to roll up rugs into bamboo. And I took the bamboo pole out of the rug in the basement, cut it into different lengths. I got a Phillips screwdriver red hot on the stove and started burning holes in it. I was already an artist, so I was painting pictures and flowers and birds and things like that on the flutes. And I made a whole bunch of flutes and different notes. And in the process, I found out that different people were talking in different key notes. And I found out then, after listening to people, I said, oh, she's an Aries. She's talking in the key of C sharp. Or he's a Gemini. He's talking in the key of F sharp. He's a Sagittarius. He's talking in the key of F. So after realizing that everybody had a note that the good Lord had given them, and all Leos talk and sing in the key of B flat. So what I would do with that knowledge, I would make a person a flute to go along with their tone mantra. So they would master it quicker, they would play it more because it reflects them. So when you look in the mirror and you see your physical image, when your sound or your note comes back to you, it has the same effect. So a Scorpio's note is E. So all Scorpios talk and sing in the key of E. It doesn't matter your race, your age. A little girl and an old man could hum, and they both would be humming in the key of E. A Libra, which is the key of D. All Libras, everybody that has a song that they're crazy about, they don't know it, but they're really crazy about it because their note is sounded in it. You know, so I would make flutes according to a person's birth sign or astrological keynote, and I was calling them tone mantra flutes. And this was back in the 70s and 80s. I was all around making a whole bunch of flutes. And I didn't give myself the name Abu the Flute Maker. Other people did this because I had so many flutes and I was doing so many flutes. But since that time, I realized that noise, all forms of noise was a note. I just heard an F sharp. So I started making musical instruments out of just about any and everything that makes noise. And coming here today, I knew I only had 15 minutes for a presentation. And I was trying to find out, what should I take? So the only thing I could think of bringing was my, I got a guitar, since it was Guitarists Against Violence was one of the themes here today. I made a guitar out of a clock. I call it a clock guitar. It's electric.
Wow.
I figured it was about time. So, if I had my amp, I could plug it in and play a number for you. I caught the devil in the phone booth. $911. Church people on their knees loading up a spiritual gun. Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, the devil thought he had us, but the tables is turned. They got him on the run. I caught him in the phone booth. $911. Okay. So I'm part of the program of Guitarists Against Violence, and I had ideas for guitars for the young people to make. They could make a guitar similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with Bo Diddley. Mm-hmm. Bo Diddley has a guitar shaped like a rectangular box, you know. So what I brought with me as an example of something that a person could play, I made a bootar. Okay. This is made from a dresser drawer. And I have a drum skin on the bottom. That's incredible. And molding stripping on the side. And in order to play this, you put it on this shoulder. It's one string, so I refer to it as a one-string sitar. And that the kids can make. This is an instrument here that I crafted from a dresser drawer. I found this piece of scrapping steel in the alley that the FedEx man must have left. I cut it into keys and I placed them over the dresser drawer. And I have a strap on it so I can put it around my waist and play it. I can play this instrument with sticks, or I can play it with my fingers.
Wow.
Okay, you talk. I had this instrument a long time. It was made from a bamboo lamp. The bell on this instrument is from a bicycle horn. And what I did, I took the bell, I took the bicycle horn, I took the black squeeze ball off and inserted the bell into the bamboo. And I put an alto saxophone mouthpiece on it. I'm a street musician, so I made a plumber phone. I felt like the plumber needed a saxophone too. So I got this PVC together, and I figured out a way to produce sound out of it. Now this is the only one in the world because I hadn't sold any of these instruments, and I invented a way to make this instrument so I wouldn't have to buy any reeds, and I don't have to put my mouth in a trumpet position to play it. All I have to do is put air in it. Wow. And sounded good. In the after-school programs, I show the young people how to play music with a soda straw. You take a straw, so I'm getting ready to show you, and you smash the end, and you notice your end looks like it's shaped like a football. Yeah, that's the end that you cut the corners off. And after you cut the corners off, you put it in your mouth, put it in like that, and you put it in your mouth. Wow. So the world's cheapest musical instrument. And I showed them they could put 2 holes in the straw, one about 1.25 inches up, and right above that, 3/4 of an inch, you put another hole. And just with those 2 holes, they can play a little song, the Charlie Brown song. So I had them all jamming with straws. Now McDonald's got to hide their straws. But this is an instrument here, very easy to make. It's made from a transmission fluid funnel. You put the fluid in your car, and let me see if I can hook this up for you real quick. I haven't played it in a long time, but it just so happens that the funnel can receive an alto saxophone mouthpiece perfectly. It slides right on it, you know.
How did you figure that out?
I didn't. I just looked at it, and I got a good vision. I can look at something and tell about the size of it. Matter of fact, if you had a cylindrical tube, I could show you where the air column would have to travel to produce a particular keynote. So I got a baseball bat that I didn't bring with me today that sounds like a saxophone. But, yeah, that's what happens. Now this transmission funnel, when I'm playing in the world, I usually play Stevie Wonder song. Matter of fact, speaking of Stevie Wonder, my daughter, her name is Aisha, and Stevie Wonder's daughter's name Aisha. So he put the song out called Aisha, and I made a double barrel nose flute. That's another one of a kind I didn't bring with me today. But I got my business cards with me, so you can go on YouTube or Google Abu the Flute Maker, and you can see the other 400 instruments. But anyway, this is what transmission funnel. Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Amy.
Y'all just in time.
Sorry we interrupted.
And no problem, no problem. No problem, you couldn't be right on time. I'm going to demonstrate a musical instrument made from a transmission funnel. And I'm going to play one of Stevie Wonder's numbers. What's it called? Living in the Sky. I forgot how bright this thing is. Like I said, you can go on YouTube and type in, you can see a lot of instruments that I've made out of found objects. I have a xylophone made out of mirrors. I cut and tune the glass. I have a bass harp from a garbage can. It's tuned and it sounds exactly like an upright bass. I have all kinds of drums that I've made out of found objects, out of butter churns and things like that, army helmets. And it's just a whole host of instruments. That's why I had a hard time trying to decide what I could bring here today to play. So I still have a few things out in my truck. But anyway, I used up more time than I was supposed to, and I hope you all forgive me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This one we wanted to take a couple of Q&As from Mary, if you had any special feelings about what you saw today, some of the images you saw, that you've embraced. She brought a lot of her friends here, a lot of her friends and family. She really has brought a lot of people here. So if you got a question for Mary or a comment,